You can learn this highly advanced Allan Holdsworth lick even if you consider yourself a relatively intermediate player, because I've created this very special and specific method that leverages your rehearsal sessions with several 100%. What this means is that it will no more be a gamble with your time to drill stuff like this, because following these instructions to the point will get you to the goal that we'll set together here in the video. My first goal was to, first of all, learn the notes. But as soon as I learned the lick, I noticed a few critical points where I was really getting challenged, but also a point where I excelled faster. But before we move into the lick, I want you to create a goal. That goal could be to be able to record it on video, just like I did here. But it could also be to arrange it into one of your solos, so that the next time you and your band are playing live, you'll be able to use it. Whatever your goal is, the general idea is to have that goal that you work towards every time that you pick up the guitar. Being able to play the legato technique and getting that smooth sound, you really have to be able to play the intervals in the patterns without too much discomfort. And that's why before we attempt to connect the patterns, I want you to drill the first 3 notes like this, back and forth, and then gradually taking up the speed. I have chosen to use my long finger in the middle instead of the ring finger because the first interval is the smallest interval. We get 1.5 notes here, and then we get 2 whole steps here. To be able to play something like this successfully, it's very important that I keep my thumb in this area right here. If your thumb in any way comes up in this area here, this will prevent you from playing those intervals that we discussed. You can see if I take my thumb up here, you can see my fingers actually start to move in closer together, and I will not be able to play a lick like this. So really make sure that you have the perfect hand position for something like this. It's a very demanding, technically demanding lick. The 3 notes that I play here is 12 with my index finger, and I play 1 picking stroke for that, and then I hammer on with my long finger to the 15th fret, and then hammer on again with my little finger to the 19th fret. Once I've hammered on with my little finger, I pull off back again. Another extremely vital point to playing legato is that you have the full understanding of the technique, because sometimes I see people who actually, instead of doing 2 pull-offs in a pattern like this, in a 3-note pattern, they actually would be doing hammer-ons on the descending part of the lick. So it's extremely vital that you don't do stuff like this. Once you played the 19th, it's extremely vital that you don't hammer on to the 15th and then hammer on again to the 12th. This will certainly prevent you from getting the speed and also the sound. So really go into detail with this lick and make sure that all the notes are equally strong. So I play 1 picking stroke, hammer on, and then hammer on, and then pull off, and pull off again, and then I hammer on again, hammer on, and pull off, and pull off. So the first note, if we started with a picking stroke, is different from the rest of the notes. And you can sit around and do this, and then also make sure that there's no excess noise from any of the other strings. Actually, before combining the whole thing, we will actually make this pattern into a lick in itself. So instead of moving on into the next thing that happens in the lick, we will just be playing this exclusively and make this into a drill, but also a very, very cool lick. Before you attempt to combine any of the other notes in this lick, I want you to drill this exclusively and get this up to speed before you move into any of the next parts of the lick. All right, now let's dig into the fun stuff. The first pattern is a combination of what we just drilled before, but we add that same pattern to the B string. One of the biggest challenges in this is that we skip 2 strings, which is pretty outrageous. If you have become used to these quite big stretches, and you're actually getting some tone from those notes, then you're ready to move into this next part, and now it really starts to become fun, but also very challenging. But if you follow the instructions and just combine little pieces of this lick, you will certainly soon be playing this lick up to speed. So let's kick it off here again on the 12th fret on the A string with the index finger, then hammering on as we did before with the long finger onto the 15th fret, and then the little finger to the 19th fret, like this. Then the madness starts. We skip both the D and the G string as I explained before and move into the B string. And as we did before here on the A string, we started the pattern off with a picking stroke and then played 2 hammer-ons after that. And we do the exact same thing here on the B string. So we start the 12th fret here on the B string or with our index finger hammering on with the long finger to the 15th fret and the little finger to the 19th fret. After that we pull off again to the 15th and to the 12th, and make sure again, as we discussed before, that you don't by accident play the hammer-ons on the descending part. So make sure that you're playing real pull-offs here once you've done the 2 hammer-ons. So after pulling off again here to the 12th, we move in, we skip those 2 strings again, the G and the D string, and then we hammer on with our little finger here. We don't use a picking stroke when we move back to the A string, which can be certainly be a challenge, but we get an even smoother sound when we avoid playing so many picking strokes. So actually I want you to play as few picking strokes as humanly possible. So hammering on here with the little finger also takes quite a lot of preciseness, but this is something that will help you generally in all of your legato work. We hammer on here with our little finger to the 19th fret. I pull off again to my long finger, which is positioned as before on the 15th fret, and then to the 12th fret. And again, make sure that you play the pull-offs and don't by accident play the hammer-ons. So now we have this cool little pattern that you are ready to drill. The way I want you to drill this is that once you can play these notes with using this technique as we just described it, with this exact fingering and the exact picking work, where we actually only use 1 picking stroke on the A string and 1 on the B string. And once you get the lick going, you only play 1 picking stroke on the B string. And the reason for this is that once you get the lick going and you just play it, then you can see I only play 1 picking stroke. You can see I started off here with the picking stroke. But once I have started it, I only use the pick on the B string. So for all these notes, I only use 1 picking stroke actually, which is pretty outrageous. But it does the trick and makes the legato work even smoother in my opinion. So the way that you're gonna practice this is that once you have the pattern down and you're not in doubt of any of the notes anymore, and you actually get some tone from each individual note, then I want you to drill this with a metronome. And don't pay attention to the rhythmical division that is on the tablature. That's not important at all yet. I want you to be able to play to a metronome, which if that is quarter notes for you, then by all means play quarter notes. If that is 8th notes for you, by all means play 8th notes. The important thing is that you are able to practice it to a metronome, and then gradually every day picking up this speed just a little bit, just a notch, so that you see some gradual improvement every day. Now I hope that you've been practicing this for a few days and you got some results already. If you feel ready for it, I want you to just add that little slide that is actually on the end of this pattern. And that is once I hit the B string with my pinky. This cool, very cool sounding little thing I do here. Or which Allan does. I can't really take the credit for this wonderful lick, although I would like to. I play 1 picking stroke here on the B string, then I hammer on with my long finger to the 15th, the little finger to the 19th. And once the little finger is here on the 19th, I do this cool little sliding technique. I slide from the 19th into the 20th fret, back again to the 19th, and then continue the legato work, pulling off. Again, make sure to do the true pull-offs and not the hammer-ons. I know I said this before, but it's really critical that you do this. Then you pull off here to the 15th and to the 12th, and then you just continue the rest of the lick as you did in the previous lesson. So once you feel ready for this little addition to your drill slash little individual lick, I want you to add this little sliding technique. It adds a lot to the sound. It's really cool, I think. In this third part of the video, we will increase the difficulty just a little bit, but again we will make it into a cool little individual lick that you can practice, and in this way leveraging the lick for a faster learning process. So what we had in the previous part was, if you added that little slide. Now I just want to show you the way that we move into this next part, then once again isolating this next part, making it into an individual lick, so to say. So what I actually do when I move into this next part is I pull off again here from 19 with my pinky into the long finger here on the 15th fret, and then I adjust my index finger to the 14th fret, which was just before was on the 12th fret. So now I position it on the 14th fret, getting this little pattern instead. And then I open up my hand, and again, as we discussed many times before, you make sure that you have this position of the hand so you are able to play these quite large stretches. Funny enough, we actually play the same intervals now, but now starting from the 14th fret. So the notes in itself are now 14, hammering onto 15, and again hammering onto the 21st fret. Another very important aspect here is that I don't even add any picking motion at all for this. As we discussed before, that we have one picking stroke here on the B string, but as soon as I return to the A string, it's just hammer on and then pulling off to the 15, pulling off to the 14th, and then hammer on again without any additional picking strokes to the 17th and to the 21st. After this, I move into the D string, and this gives a very special sound because we actually get from on the A string, we actually play the F sharp, and then we move into an E on the D string. So we actually move in the phrase, move back from the F sharp down to the E, which gives a really interesting sound. Since I'm ascending in this part of the phrase, I'm actually using a picking stroke when we move into the D string. If it's really tough for you to play these stretches, then I would really suggest that you continue with the one string lesson that we did in the first part, because now we're actually going to stretch even a little bit further. One half step with the little finger. So we get this step here on the D string, it's 14 with the picking stroke, and then hammering on with my long finger to the 17th fret and with my little finger to the 22nd fret. Really a special sound here. The good thing about it is that we have now moved even further up the neck, which makes the stretches maybe a little more humane. But you could make this little drill here if you like. But I would actually also suggest that you could do this. Once you get used to this part, I just want to add the next part already, because I believe that if you have followed the video where you spend some time on each part until you feel that you actually develop your technique so that you're ready for the next part. I hope that you've been doing this and then hopefully feel ready for the next part. Because once I've done this, we do that very large skip that we did in the previous lesson as well. And this time we're gonna skip the G and the B string and move up all the way up to the high E string. We actually play the the exact same intervals that we did on the D string. So once I'm here on the high E string, I've been skipping all those strings, the G and the B string, I play one picking stroke. Since we are again ascending here, I play one picking stroke on the 14th fret with my index finger, hammering on with my long finger to the 15th fret, to the 17th fret, and then again with my pinky on the 22nd fret. And then if we want to make it into a little drill, which I certainly will suggest that you do, then pulling off again to those notes. And again, I just want to make sure that you don't by accident hammer on when you descend. So make sure once that you have played one picking stroke on the high E string, hammering on with your long finger, and you're hammering on again with your pinky, then pulling off with your pinky right after this, and then again pulling off with your long finger. And then we're gonna do the crazy skip here again, and then starting our phrase on the D string with our pinky on the 22nd fret. So this is really a challenge. Actually, we don't do that in the complete lick. If you get used to do this, you will really leverage your whole legato game. Sounds pretty insane. It also sounds a little bit like maybe something Richie Kotzen would have done in the 80s or the 90s. I want to introduce you to a new way of practicing, which is extremely effective. It's called deep practicing. I just want to show you the piece that I want you to use this new concept with deep practicing. They're actually going to take the final part of the previous lesson that we just went through. So this part is going to be the beginning part of this deep practicing part. The previous lesson is, as all the previous parts, that I would suggest that you practice with a metronome, which is very effective in this way, as we discussed in the previous. But in this part, I want you to take a different approach. So I hammer on here from the 14th to the 17th and 22nd, pulling those notes off again. Make sure they pull off and not hammer on. So once I'm back here from the 22nd to the 17th and the 14th, I slide down to the 12th fret. And this part was really difficult to me, and I found that the deep practicing approach was so effective compared to the normal way where I would just use a metronome and then see those gradual improvements. But for some reason I just didn't feel that development in my practicing and in the lick when I was using my regular approach. So anyway, sliding down to the 14th, and then I skip two strings again. I skip the B string and the D string, hammer on with my little finger on the 17th fret on the D string, and then I pull off from my little finger here to the index finger, which is positioned on the 14th fret. And then I sort of opening up my hand again, and with the same technique as we discussed in the previous parts, where you of course keep your thumb down on the back of the neck to be able to open up your hand, because now we're faced with those very large intervals again. So pulling off to the index finger on 14th fret, I hammer on with my long finger to the 17th fret, and with my little finger to the 22nd fret. And then I skip two strings again. I move up to the high E string, and now I'm going to play a 4-note pattern. It actually gets kind of a bluesy sound, I think. I use my pick here because we are ascending, as we discussed before. I just want to make sure that you also understand that as we discussed before, whenever I descend, I never use the pick. So the part here where I move down with my little finger to the 17th, pulling off to 14, and then opening up the hand is without the pick at all. So back again here to the 15th fret on the high E string with a picking stroke. I hammer on to the 17th, and then with my ring finger to the 20th fret and my little finger to the 22nd fret, sliding up and then pulling off to the 22nd. In the last part we introduce the whammy bar. So after pulling off from the 24th to the 21st, I do this, make this little dip, and then stop the note. I really want to stress that you follow these directions, because these directions will get you to the goal, as I promised in the introduction. What you do is you learn every note, make sure that you're using the correct fingering and the correct picking technique. As we discussed, only picking on the ascending parts and pure legato on the descending parts. But make sure that you use the fingering that your hand and your fingers feels most comfortable with. You take the countdown option on your cell phone, you put it to 7 minutes. In those 7 minutes, you're going to play this final part as slow as humanly possible, watching every move of your hands, keeping a full focus on your hands. And I want you to turn everything off. This means turning off your computer, making sure that your phone is set on mute, and make sure also that you are alone in the room, so no interruptions are possible at all for those 7 minutes where you're going to do the deep practicing. I'm going to give you an example of how I did it. The whammy part is not necessary. That is how slow I practiced it, and it really worked. It really worked so well. And once that you feel comfortable with it and you just can take it up the speed a little bit, then you can introduce the metronome, and then finally combining the whole piece. And you should do this every day, at least once a day, that deep practicing for about 7 minutes. It's very important that you keep your focus on every little move your fingers are doing, because this is what deep practice is all about, and it really works, believe me.